Alright guys, welcome back. So in this video we'll be looking at CSS selectors. So let's get into it. Okay, so what are CSS selectors used for? CSS selectors are used to target particular elements or groups of elements in order to style them. And some of these elements include universal selectors, element selectors, class, ID selectors, attribute selectors, and there are more selectors. So let's check it and see how it works. Okay, so let's get started right away. So on your left you have the web browser, and on the right side you have the CSS style sheet, which is empty right now, and below it you have the HTML file with all our HTML codes inside. Okay, so let's take a look at the HTML code first. That is this one. Let me increase the size. Okay, so for this it's simple. You have the title tag, then the link inside the header, and the link is linking to the external style sheet, which is on top. So if you don't know how to do that, I'll link a video so that you can go check it out. I did that in my past video, so you can check that one out. And below it in the body we have the h4 tag, which has the CSS selectors text inside it, and the p tag, which has the my name is Yoshi, and below it we have the welcome to my CSS course. Okay, so those are the things showing over here. So let me increase the size of this as well. Alright, so first of all we like to check the universal selectors. So what the universal selectors do is that it selects the entire element. In any element on the page, it selects it and applies a style to it. So let's see how this works. So let's go into our external CSS file. Then with the external selector, with the universal selector, we need the asterisk sign, and we bring our curly brace and we write our rules. So for this one, let's make it simple and just change the color of our text. So to change the color of our text, we just specify the color rule, or the key should be color, then you specify the actual name of the color. So that will be red. Let's make it red for now. So if I type that, then it selects all the elements. So mind you, the elements are these: h4, p tag, and another p tag with the text inside it. So right now we are styling all these elements. So if I am to add another element inside, so another, let's say below this, below the h4 element, I bring maybe an h6 element, right? And inside it I write introduction to selectors, right? Introduction to selectors. So it's added below here, and it also has the style red, since we specified it to make it to apply to all the elements inside it. So that's for the universal element. And normally this used to reset your elements, and we look at that when we go a step further. But for now, this is how to use the universal selector. Okay, so now let's look at the element selector. So let me take this out. I'll take the universal selector out. Then for the element selector, how we use it is you write the exact name of the selector the element you want to select. For example, if I want to select the p element or the p tag, I bring my curly brace, then inside it I write my rule. So for this, I can write background color. I want to change the background color, so for that I specify it like this. Then I could make it blue, right? And let's change the color as well, the color of the text inside, so that we could all see what's written inside. So I'll make the color white. So what this means is that you select every single p tag or the p element inside the HTML file. So the HTML file has two p tags or p elements, and these are the two. So inside this, let me just write I am p tag or p element, right? And below this, let me write I am another p element, right? So here too, I'll just write I am an h6 element. Then here for the last one, I'll write I am an h4 element. Okay, so we are done. Let's see the changes. Okay, so the first one, I am an h4 element, is an h4 element. This one is an h6 p element, then p element. So from this styling, it's supposed to apply to only these two elements right here. It's not supposed to apply to any other element. So let's see. Save, and let's see the changes. So it has applied it to only those two elements since they are p elements. It didn't apply to any other element. So for the same thing, if you type maybe h6, it's going to apply to the h6. If I type h1, it doesn't apply to any since we don't have an h1 element inside. So it's as simple as that. Okay, so now let's look at another type of selector, which is the class selector. So let's see how this works. So for the class selector, let's go into the HTML document or the HTML file, then go into, let's see, the h4 element, then add class, the class attribute equal to, then quotation marks, then write you could write anything here. So you could write your name or any other thing that could come to your mind, but it has to make sense, right? So this is an example, so let me just write my name inside. I'm not able to come up with any sensible name, so let me just write my name. Okay, so Yoshi. Then I'm done with adding a class to the element. So this is how to add a class. Then we go to the top inside CSS file, then you write the class name. So that's Yoshi. You can write anything you want, so whatever you wrote, add it as the class name, followed by the curly brace. But before you let the CSS file know this, the class name, you have to bring a full stop or a dot in front of it to let it know it's a class name, right? Okay, so once you have done this, that's it. The class is going to apply. So let me just add the same class to this p element. So I've added the same class, Yoshi. So what should happen is any element with the class of the name Yoshi should apply these rules or these rules to it. So you should have a background color of blue and a text color of white. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so you apply to I am h4 element and I am p element for the first p element because it has the class Yoshi. So it's that simple. So the next one is the ID selector. So this is just like the class selector, but instead of using class, we use an ID. So let's go to the h6, then type ID as an attribute. Just so you know, attributes are only allowed inside the opening tag. So you can't write an attribute inside the closing tag, only inside the opening tag. So you could write special, because IDs are supposed to be special. You are not supposed to specify the same IDs for different elements. IDs are just to be specified for one element. So what I'm trying to say is an element should have an ID but should not have the same ID on another element. So let's say I go to this p tag. Even though it would work, it's not right for me to specify the same ID for two different elements. So this one too is supposed to be a different thing. So let me just write Kazu. So they both have an ID, they both have IDs, but it's supposed to be different names. It's supposed to have different names, right? Okay, so how do we apply this? So just like the class, first you write the name. So we have special, right? Then we have Kazu. So if it was class, you put a dot, but this is not a class, it's an ID, so you just put the hash symbol or the pound sign, right? And you could specify whatever you want inside it. So let's say you want background color to be yellow. So for the element to ID or special, it should have a background color of yellow. Then for this, you should have a background color of green. Okay, so you can specify any CSS attribute, any CSS property here, but for this example I'm trying to make it simple, so I'm just using background color for now. Okay, so let me just save this and let's see what happens. Okay, so the yellow applies to the ID with special, an element to ID with special, and the green applies to an element to ID Kazu. Okay, so I think this is kind of very simple to understand, so we can move on to the next one. So let me just take all these out and keep the rest there. So we are back to our plain text without no styling. Okay, so the next type of selector we're going to look at is the attribute selector. So let's see how this one works. Okay, so for this we go like this: specify the attribute selector by bringing the box brace, right? Then the curly brace, and inside the box braces we bring the name of the attribute we want to select. So let's say class. So if you look down below, we have two elements with the class attribute. So this has the class attribute, this also has class attributes. So it's going to select both of these, but it's not going to select the other two because it doesn't have the class attributes. So let's see. So class, then background color, green. Make this green, and let's see what happens. Yeah, so just like I said, it's selecting only the elements with the attribute class. Okay, so this is not the only thing we could do with this, we could do some other things too. Okay, so if you like to select an attribute with a particular text within it, then we could do it like this. So we have this. Okay, so for this one, let's use the ID attribute. Then we bring the equal to sign with a quotation mark. Then inside it, we specify what we want inside the attribute. So maybe Kazu. So this is the syntax. So the box brace, the ID equal to quotation mark, the exact thing you want inside. Then you close them all off. Okay, so what this does is it selects an element with an ID with Kazu in it and applies the rules. So if you look down, it's only this element that could apply to, right? Yeah, so it's as simple as that. So we save and see what we get. So yeah, so it's selecting this element. Okay, so just so you know, the attribute, what we did, that is an attribute with a specified text within it. It also works without the quotation marks, so we could just specify it like this without the quotation marks and it will still work the same, right? Cool. Okay, so with the attribute selectors, there are more complex things you could do with this, but I'll just go over a few of those, maybe one or two, then we move on to our next selector. Okay, so for the next one, let's look at an attribute selector that selects a word that is part of an attribute name. So for that, we could use the class selector, and we could do the tilde symbol equal to, and maybe you could bring something like CSS here. Okay, so if you don't know where the tilde symbol is, right beside the 1 on your keyboard. Okay, so on my HTML file, let me bring beside the Yoshi, let me bring CSS. Okay, so now this class has Yoshi together with CSS, so it's a class name combining multiple words, right? Okay, so for this we are just selecting a class attribute, right, which has CSS inside it. It doesn't matter whether it's beginning or it's at the end, it just has to be inside it, right? So that's what this means. Okay, so this concept is a bit advanced, but I just wanted to chip this in. So let me just save it and refresh. Okay, so it's selecting this element because it has CSS inside it, right? Okay, so now let's look at the next one. Okay, so for the next one, I want to also look at another one, the same attribute selector type. So with this, it looks at the beginning and the end of the attribute name. So first of all, okay, let me just clear this. Then let me go into the HTML element. Okay, let me increase the size a bit just so you could see clearly. And let me add 2 anchor elements. Okay, so the first will be yoshi.com, right? Then this will have an href attribute which will be equal to http://yoshi.com. Okay, and I'd like to bring another one. Which will be www. Maybe Google, just Google without the .com, and you just type Google here, right? So now we've included these 2 anchor elements. Yeah, so this is the first one. Okay, so let me bring a BR tag so that this goes on to the next line. Cool. So you have the first one, yoshi.com, and the second one, Google. And these have the href, http, what. And the second one has http, the second one has www.google. Okay, so let's see how to select either of them using their attribute names. So we could go like this. First of all, the attribute name is, the actual attribute is href, right? Then if you want to select the first one, since the first one has an http in front, you could just copy it and bring it here. Then you can bring this symbol, I don't know what the name of this symbol is, but on my keyboard it's on the number 6. So if you press Shift plus 6, you get this symbol, right? Just in case you can't see, this is it. Okay, so what this does is it selects an attribute name that begins with whatever is specified. So in this case it's http. So let's see. And let's make the text color white, so we could see what the text is. So white, right? Okay, then let's refresh. Okay, so now I'm selecting the yoshi.com because it's beginning the HTTP. The attribute name begins with HTTP, right? Okay, what about if you want to select the end? Okay, so let's say the Yoshi, this one didn't have a .com, but we had the .com on the Google page rather, right? So this doesn't have the .com, this has a .com. Okay, so it ends with .com. So to select an attribute ending with a certain value, you can use the $sign. So after a $sign, you write the equal to, then you bring the com, right? So let's see this, and let's see. So yeah, it selects the one that ends with the com, just as we specified it over here. Because if you don't bring this and you just bring href, it selects both of them. And if you don't want that, then you have to be more specific by using those things that I just showed you to select only one thing, looking from their differences. So in this case, the difference is the first one begins with an HTTP, the second one begins with a .com, ends with a .com. Okay, but there could be other differences based on what you're building. So once you're able to figure that out, then you should know what to use in your selector at the top or inside your CSS file. Okay, so the next thing we'll be looking at, okay, so for the next one, we'll try and change how our HTML looks a bit. So let me try and make the changes right now. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I'm done. So here's my new code for the HTML page. It's a bit confusing, but I'll explain everything, especially if you're a beginner. So what we have here is, first of all, there is a div element. So if you've not seen a div element before, this is just like an empty container, but this is a block level container. Okay, so as for the block level, I'll explain to you as the video goes on, but that's a div, that's like an empty container. So the div element contains the p tag, another p tag, an h4, and h6, right? And inside the h6 also, if you look carefully, there's a span element inside it before we close the h6. Then the div closes here. So the div contains all of these guys. Then after the div, there is the h6, right? So I'm going to show you how to select things based on their hierarchy. So with the hierarchy, I mean for the div tag, is going to be the grandparent of the span tag. So why is it the grandparent? Okay, then let me take this step by step. So first of all, the span tag is on its own here, but the span tag is inside the h6. So that will make the h6 the parent of the span tag, because the span tag is inside the h6. So the span tag is the child, and the h6 becomes the parent of the span tag, because the h6 encloses the span tag. I hope you get it. Okay, so now when we go out of that, we have the div. So to the span tag, the div is going to be its grandparent, because it has a parent of h6, which is this, and the h6 has a parent of the div. So to the h6, the div is its parent, but to the span tag, this div is its grandparent. So same for these other tags. Since it's inside the div tag, this div tag is going to be their parents, right? Their parent. So the h4, this h4, and these two p tags have a parent of the div. So to the p tag, all the other tags inside or beside it, right, are his siblings. or those are the siblings of the p tag. So the p tag has a sibling of another p tag, h4, and the h6. So the span tag wouldn't be its sibling since it's not directly beside it, right? So the siblings are the p, h4, h6, and the p tag. And for the div tag also, but for the h6 over here, since it's not inside the div tag, it can't be its child. So it's another sibling of the div tag since it's just beside it. So I hope you guys understand from my explanation. So those are the relationships between the tags based on what we have here. So yeah, those are the relationships, and we are going to select elements based on relationships they have with other elements. So let's continue from there. Okay, so for instance, if I want to select the span element over here, that would be simple. I'll just type span, right? And I can select it simply like that. So let me just specify the property. Let's make this yellow, right? So since the span tag is just here, it's been selected, right? So that's simple. Okay, so what about if we do h6? It's going to select two tags, right? Since there's h6 inside the div and h6 outside the div. But what if you want an h6 that's a child of the div, right? So if that's the case, then what you do is this. You go right in front of the h6 tag, then you bring div or any element that you have inside another element. So in this case, it's the div. So after you type your div, you bring a space, then the element that follows it. So let's save it. Now it selects only the h6 that's a child of the div element. So this is how to do that. It's as simple as this. So the same way, if I want to select all the children of the div element, you just combine it with the universal selector like this. Then we save. So this means select all the elements that's also a child of the div, right? Okay, cool. So let me just take this off and bring a span again. So now let me add another span element inside of here. I'm placing the span element inside the other h6 elements, right? So now we have two spans, and I want to select the span inside the div element, so this one. So if that's the case, I could do it this way. Instead of just writing span to select both of the two spans, I'll just type div, then I could go inside the h6 as well, h6, then span. So let me save it. So it selects only this one. So this is because this span is a child of the h6 tag, but both of these h6 tags have the span inside it. So even if I leave it at this h6 span, it's still going to select the two of them. So I still have to bring the div tag so that it will know that it wants to select the h6 with a span in it which has a parent of div, right? So it's only this tag which qualifies for that. Okay, so that's why it selects only one of those. So this is not only for elements, you can use it for you can also use it for class and IDs as well. So for instance, if I put a class of class, sorry, maybe header, right? And I copy this and I place the same class inside the h6, right? So from what we learned, we know that if I specify the class of header, it's going to select both this and this, right? So let's try it and see. So dot header, dot header is going to select the two elements with the header class, right? But if I want to select the one inside the div, it's simple. I just put the div in front of it. But mind you need to bring a space between the div and the dot. So why did I say you need to bring a space between the div and the dot? So let's see. If I bring the header here on the div tag, so the div is the container enclosing everything, in case you forgot. So if I bring this here, then I just leave it at header. It selects everything. Okay, so class name dot header, if I bring that, it's going to apply to all the elements of the class name header. So let's see what we get. Yeah, you are going to get this. Mind you, the div encloses all of these. That's why it has the background color over all of these, right? Okay, so now, just like I said, if you bring div and a space, it's going to select only the header, the elements with the header class that comes after the div, right? So that's going to be just this guy. But what if I remove the space here and make it div.header? So what does this mean? It means it's going to select the div element, right, with the class of header. Okay, it's going to select the div element with the class of header, not the div element, or not the element with the class name of header inside the div. No, that's different since it doesn't have a space. There is no space, so this means it's going to select the div element with the class name of header. So let's get another example and see. So let's make this okay, so let's go into the HTML document, then change this to an ID. An ID of, let's just make it my name, Yoshi. You could use anything you want, but for this example, we just use my name. Then you type it there. Then for the ID, you need the pound symbol. So this is going to select only the last 86, right? So once this is selected, you could bring the 86 in front of it, right? It's still going to select the same thing, but this doesn't make sense since it's an ID. Only one element can have one ID. So let's make it a class. Then add the Yoshi. Okay, make this the Yoshi class. The H6 have the Yoshi class, and bring the Yoshi class also on the H4. So instead of deleting this header, I could just add another class to this by bringing space and typing the name of the other class, right? So if I do that and I remove the H6 from here and save it, okay, so it's selecting both of these since it has the class name of Yoshi inside it, right? But the moment I bring maybe an H4, right? The moment I bring an H4, it's only going to select every single H4 element that has the Yoshi class or the class name of Yoshi. So that's this guy right here. This guy. Right? But if I bring a space here, it's a different thing altogether. So just be careful of that. Don't bring space if you know what you're doing. So this doesn't only apply to the class selector, you can do it with even the attribute selector. So you could do something like you could bring the box braces, then the attribute name of class. So let's say we don't have the H4 in front of it. This is going to select all the elements with a class attribute inside it. So let's see. So all these guys have class attributes inside it. So the moment I bring maybe an H6 tag or an H6 element, sorry. The moment I bring an H6 element, now only this tag qualifies to be selected, right? So this means an H6 element that also has an attribute name of class, a class attribute. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so now we look at another way of selecting other elements. Now I'd like to modify the HTML file once again. So now I would like to bring this another span tag right here. So span. So since this is an inline element, I'll just like to bring a break at the end. So in case you don't understand the inline elements or block elements, I'll explain that in another video. But for now, this is a span element with a break, so the next element comes on the next line. So alright, I am the first span tag, right? Okay. So with this I can demonstrate our next selector type. Okay, so here is it. This is what I added. So right now, let's try and select spans. So I type in span here, save and refresh. Okay, now we have selected all the spans, right? These are all the spans inside our HTML file. So I want to select only the span tag that is the direct child of this div, right? So let's say I bring div over here and bring a space. It's still going to add this span tag as well, but I don't want this span tag to be added. I only want this guy right here. But for this, if I want to select only the last guy, it's simple. I could bring the span tag, so div span right here. I'll bring div span, I'll bring div, then I'll look through our HTML file and I'll look at it and see that it's inside the H6. I'll just bring H6 and I'll bring span. So this is simple for this tag, right? But what if I want this span tag without selecting this one? How do you do that? Okay, so for that you can use a greater than symbol. So let's see, it's as simple as this. So what does this mean? So div, then the greater than symbol, then the span. So this is used to select the direct children of the div. So this means select every span tag, right? That is a direct child of div, right? So to this div, the other span tag, that is this one inside, is also a child, though it's considered a grandchild from this span tag. This div also sees it as a child. That's why if I remove this and bring a space, it selects all of its children. But the span tag is a direct child since it comes directly after it. But the other span doesn't come directly after it since it's also inside another element. So the other span tag is inside the h6 over here. So their relationship is not a direct child and parent relationship. It's not direct. But for this span tag, it's direct. So to make it direct, you could use this greater than symbol to specify that and to select the direct children of any tag you want. So in this case, it's the div tag. So you want the direct child span, the direct child span element, right? So yeah, it selects just that. It doesn't select any other span element that's not a direct child. So I could bring the same thing below it, right? So if I bring the same thing below, since the other span, this other span I just added is also the direct child, it selects this one too as well. Okay. So the next one we are going to look at is selecting an element that comes right next to it. So with that, you can use the plus symbol. So let's say the p tag, we want to select a p tag. Okay, so it selects the two p tags inside the HTML file. So these are the two. So what if this guy, right, I want to select this guy's immediate sibling. So if I want to select this tag's immediate sibling, so since this is a p tag, I'll just do p plus p. So this means that select a p tag that is an immediate sibling of another p tag, right? So that's it. This is how to do that. Normally you don't usually use this, but you should know when you need this, then you could use it accordingly. But this is just for you to know that these exist. So that's selecting the immediate sibling of another element. So for this, let's take another example. For example, for this p tag or any other p tag, let's say this p tag, we want to select the next span element that comes after it. So it's simple. You just select the span that immediately comes after a p element. So it is p plus span, right? Mind you, this could be done with class and attribute selectors, class selectors, and also ID selectors as well. So for this example, I'm just using element selectors a lot, but this could be used with class and the other selectors as well. So you do this. Okay, so let's see what happened. So now let's look at a p element, this p element, right, or this p element. Then it looks at the next span tag. It looks at the next sibling that is a span tag. This one also is a span tag, right? I am the first span tag, but this comes before this one, so therefore it selects only the first sibling of the span tags. I hope that's clear. Okay, these things could be sometimes very confusing, but once you get the hang of it, I'm sure you get to understand it very well. So the more you practice, the more you get to understand how to use these selectors and when to know how to use it at different occasions. But we are still not done. So the next one we are going to look at is selecting all the siblings that comes after a particular element, right? So for example, in this very example, we selected just the one span tag coming next of the p tag, right? But we don't want to do that in this case. You want to select all the other span tags, which is a sibling of, let's say, this p tag, right? So if you want to do that, instead of using the plus, use the tilde symbol, which is right beside the one on your keyboard. So once you do that, it selects all the siblings, right? All the siblings that are span tags, all the siblings of the p element that are span tags that come right after it, not before it but after it, right? Cool. So in this case, it doesn't go and select in the, let's look at the HTML file, since even though there is a span tag inside it, it doesn't select it because it's not a sibling of any of the p tags inside over here. These are where the only p tags are, and since we are selecting the p tag first, the p tag will also look at its siblings. So these are the only siblings or the direct siblings that are span tags. Okay, there is another span tag inside here, but it's not a direct sibling. The only direct sibling which is also a span tag are these ones. So those ones are the ones that is selecting, right? So even though it might sound confusing or maybe confusing, the more you use it, the more you get used to it. So I just urge you guys to practice more so that you understand it more. But normally you don't use these selectors, right? Normally you mostly use the class selectors and maybe the ID selectors, but it's also good to know these selectors in case you have maybe an interview coming up where you get asked about how to use these types of selectors. And you can also use it as well, but you should just know how to use it, when to use it, right? So I just urge you guys to practice more. Okay, so now let's take a look at the next types of selectors. That will be the pseudo class and pseudo element selectors. So beginning with the pseudo class, and for this example, I'll just like to remove the already existing HTML we have, right? Let's simplify what we have and leave it at just one p tag, right? So we just have one p tag inside. Let's go into the, and we've also cleared our CSS here. Then refresh, then we have only this. I am a p tag, right? So one of the most popular pseudo classes, the hover. So for that you could do p, then colon, then hover. And let's see what this does. So I'll just bring background color, right? Make it yellow again. So let me refresh and we see what we get. We don't get anything for now, but if we hover over it, it changes. So this is the hover pseudo class, right? Okay, so the next one we look at is the end child. So for this, let's bring more elements into it. So let me just copy and paste the p tags. Right, we save, then over here we type end child, right? Then bring a bracket. So inside the bracket we could specify a number, so it could be since over here we have 4 P elements, we can just specify from 1 to 4, so maybe 3. So if we save this in the CSS file, right, so it selects the third one since we've written 3 over here. So we select the first one if you write 1. So this means that of all the P elements inside the HTML file, it will select the very first child element, right? You could also do something interesting by selecting all the even or odd number of elements. So this is 1, which is an odd number. This is 3, which is also an odd number. And let me add another one. That would be the 5th one, which also falls as another odd number, right? So we could do in such a way to select all the P tags that fall on either the even or the odd number of element position. So this first, so 1, so that's an odd element position. So 2, that's an even element position, and so on and so forth. So let's see how we do this. So we could write an equation inside the child brace. So we could write something like 2n plus 1, right? So the n is going to be the number that the element falls on. So if you're on the first one, n is going to be 1. So 1 times 2 is going to be 2, plus 1 is going to be 3. Okay, but for this case, it's going to start from 0. In most programming languages or in coding, most of the times numbering starts from 0, right? So this will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. So n being equal to 0, which is the first one, times 2, which will be 0, then 1. Or did I get it wrong? So yeah, so from this equation, so if you refresh from this equation, it's going to select only the odd numbers, right? So if you remove the 1 from here, it's going to select the numbers or the P elements that fall on the even number ordering. So if the order is on an even number, then it selects it. So if you change it to +1, it selects all the P element that falls on the odd number order, right? Yeah. Now let me clear this, then we look at some pseudo elements. Okay, so we refresh again, clean this out. Okay, cool. So for the pseudo elements, you bring double colons and you write the name of the pseudo element. Pseudo element selectors, one of it is first letter. So for this, it selects only the first letter of the entire paragraph. So yeah, as simple as that. Very easy to understand. So for example, if you want to increase the first letter, so instead of changing the background color, you could just type font size. So this changes the size of the font to maybe 20 pixels, right? I think that's too small. Make it maybe 50, right? So this is how to do this in CSS. So you can easily change the styling of the first letter of a paragraph with this style. Okay, so let's take a look at another pseudo element. Okay, so I just remembered that there's since I did the first child or the nth child, I need to also do the last child, right? So for this, it's going to be a pseudo class, so just 1 colon. So yeah, so let's see how this one works. Okay, so I forgot to specify the value of this. So yeah, it selects the last child, right? Yeah, so that's the opposite of the first child, right? Yeah. And there are many more pseudo selectors and pseudo classes available. I couldn't cover them all in this video. Maybe I'll do that in another video. I could check them out in books or online somewhere. I think all the tags that all the selectors that I use are covered pretty much in this video, so I think they'll be good enough for you to do whatever selection you want to do to your elements. So we will now have to end here and look at our next video. In the next video, we'll be looking at one of CSS core concepts, which is the box model.